Welcome back. My name is Marita Irby, and I'm one of the co-leads of the Readiness Projects and here at the Forum for Youth Investment. We're at the midpoint of our 5-week series, tackling 5 of the thorniest issues that we've been hearing people grapple with as they move from 2020 into 2021. And as with all these sessions, we're going to kick off with a panel discussion and then have plenty of time for small group topical discussions, kicking into those at about the halfway point. We invite you all to be a part of the full group discussion by using the chat function for your comments, your snaps, your +1s and questions, and encourage you to start using the chat right now by sharing your name and where you're joining from today. One of the mantras of the Readiness Projects is all learners, all adults, all settings. And in this series so far, we've talked about the settings piece and how to make all of the places and spaces in the community more visible. We spent last week talking about all adults and how to empower all of the adults that are really dedicated to making meaningful learning experiences for young people. And today at the midpoint of the series, we're really zooming in on all learners and especially those young people that have been hardest hit by the multiple crises of this year. And in many cases, we're not being well supported before those crises hit. Hal Smith from the National Urban League and ALICIA WILSON-AHLSTROM with the Forum are going to lead us in that discussion and are going to be joined by national and local leaders and as well as some young leaders who are working on these issues and challenges and going to be talking about their own experiences in this year. And as we had that discussion, we really just want to go into it thinking about how do we think about each and every young person and the challenges they're facing this year. How do we really bring our attention, our fullest creativity, our partnership? How are we fully engaged in that work? Before we turn it over to Hal to lead the discussion, though, we wanted to hear from a couple of school superintendents who really, I think, exemplify what we're hearing from our school leaders about the extreme pressure that schools are under this year. About the challenges that they're having and really making sure that they're reconnecting all students and just the passion that they have for this work. These school leaders from Sacramento and Oakland, actually, the clips we're going to share were from last spring when they were teeing up some of the challenges that they were facing in terms of that reconnection. And we're going to hear an update from KAYLA Jackson with the School Administrators Association of what kind of happened next in both of those cases. So we're going to kick off with those clips from a conversation that AASA and Council had with these superintendents last spring. And then the next person you'll see on your screen will be Hal.
I mean, in Sac City Unified, we had a board meeting yesterday and I had to present to our board that we still have not been able to locate 1,636 students. Our homeless students are 4 times more likely to have been unreachable, but it also applies to some of our Asian groups, like our Laotian students. And you know, I'm proud that you know, I'm a data-centric person, but this is a time where every one of those numerators we have to treat with utter respect because they represent individual lives, and I'm very, very concerned and deeply troubled by the idea that we have not been able to locate over 1,600 students. I doesn't bring any comfort that it's only about 3% of our population, because again, every one of those 1,636 students represents the life of a child.
I'm a huge proponent of it really does take a village to raise children. And as we all were in this work, because I know all of us that are on this call, listening, presenting, know that public education is fundamental to having a thriving democracy. And so this issue of wellness, what we're seeing, particularly for some of the groups Jorge mentioned, are homeless students, foster youth, our Asian Pacific Islanders, our newcomers, Latinx, African Americans. I mean, I want to be specific in naming these groups because we're seeing in these communities health disparities. We're seeing in these communities, this is where the food insecurity is occurring. We're seeing in these communities, and we should predict, that's where the instructional loss is going to be the greatest. And so across our schools, what we're hearing from many of our teachers and principals is we need help. It seems like a small thing, but continuing to build capacity among our teachers, our social workers, our nurses, other just critical essential workers on how to connect. What are those questions to ask, which is a lot of the talent and assets of what we've been learning in CASEL.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Hal Smith with the National Urban League, and it is my privilege to join you today as part of this discussion and to open up our thinking based on what we heard from the two superintendents and the kinds of things that I think the nation is facing writ large. Certainly, we are aware of the percentages of missing young people and children and missing from our formal institutions, perhaps not missing from the other kinds of community stakeholders, food banks, youth development programs, development programs focused on community and housing, that they're present, but they're missing from this educational experience and from schools. And whether you believe these are percentages in the single digits, 5%, 7% nationally, or the higher end that we've heard, 30%, there are a large number, an unacceptable number of young people missing from schools, not connected, not engaging with the institutions. And we think that is not only a question of justice, but a question of equity, right? And what kinds of strategies and supports do we need to invent or connect if we're going to serve these young people well? So when we think about this at the National Urban League, and I would guess for many of you, what we envision first is how do you engage students, families, and stakeholders in a meaningful and sustained manner? How do you connect people to one another, institutions to one another, with a focus on serving children, students, family, youth better, more comprehensively, to greater impact? Secondly, and I want to follow up on what the second superintendent mentioned, is being very specific, right? Knowing, naming, and be able to explain how you're going to serve these particular students. All students, every student is not necessarily going to get us where we need to be. We need to talk about each student, types of students that are particularly vulnerable or who are missing by category, but being very, very specific about who we're talking about and who might we not be talking about because they're being well served or even averagely served in this system, and this system under COVID. Being very specific also about intersecting inequities and how they affect our communities, right? So having young people who are homeless and houseless, right, who are already receiving some benefits from Title I and from other kinds of outreach and supportive approaches, all of these things are intersecting with one another. Those who are highly mobile because of the ways in which their family situation exists. Those are the kinds of things we want to think about, the intersections of inequity, of vulnerability, and the ways in which we need to think about supporting people in their fullness. And lastly, how do we build agency? How do we build voice and connectedness amongst all stakeholders, including young people, students, children? We have today the benefit of hearing from a number of young people, and I know there are other young people in the chat and on the Zoom. This is an invaluable opportunity, and I hope as you go forward, you're always thinking about how else can we engage young people? How can we hear from them? How can we understand the culture that they've built for themselves, the supportive spaces that they've built for themselves, and be aware of all the things that they're experiencing, not from how we would have dealt with it, but how they are dealing with it, how they are making a way out of no way, if you will. And with that, I will turn it to ALICIA and our panel.
I'm going to give our panelists time to bring their screens up and to unmute themselves. But again, my name is ALICIA WILSON-AHLSTROM, and I will be serving as facilitator for our panel discussion with the young people. So I want to thank Hal for setting the stage. And we have three young people who will come on screen, KAYLA, Richardson, TEIA HUDSON and TRISTAN SLOUGH. And we're going to bring them on screen.
Hi everyone, my name is KAYLA Richardson. I'm a senior at Lindblom Math and Science Academy located on the south side of Chicago. And I am from the National Urban League Youth Council. I am the Chicago representative, and thanks just for having me.
Thank you, KAYLA. TEIA.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is TEIA HUDSON. I am a now junior at the Science Leadership Academy at Bieber in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm recently a new National Urban League Youth Council member. I have attended virtual panels before, and I'm so excited to be here today.
Wonderful. And Tristan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan Slough. I am a junior at Vanderbilt University, and I've been based out of Nashville for the past 4 years or so. I'm a Juvenile Justice Strategy Group Youth Advisory Council member with the Casey Foundation, and I'm also a young fellow with the Jim Casey Youth Opportunities Initiative.
Thank you, everyone, for those introductions. And let's start our wonderful panel. So, KAYLA, I'm going to start with you. So when Hal set the stage, he mentioned young people missing connections in schools and in formal institutions in the community, but he also mentioned how we might build agency. So I want to start by allowing you to talk about some of your experiences over the past 8 months. Tell me how you have maintained connections with friends, classmates, extended family, and other adults over the last 8 months.
Right, okay, so FaceTime has been my best friend over these 8 months, just giving me that personal vibe and connection with people as much as possible without like being in any type of harm or anything with COVID going on. I taught my grandparents and my extended family, who's like much older, Zoom calls, and they FaceTime me all the time now. So we're able to do that a lot. We did that for Thanksgiving, which was really nice. And I've been able to hang out with my friends, socially distanced, and we all got tested like after we hung out and stuff, just to make sure everything was okay, so we can still like have that connection with each other and like not really lose each other like over these 8 months. So
yeah, thank you for that. And then TEIA, I want to bring you in too, and tell us a little bit about your experiences over the last 8 months and how you've connected with friends and family and classmates.
So like KAYLA said, FaceTime and Zoom have been very, very helpful. At first, a lot of my family is really older and sickly. So as though we were planning to go visit them before the pandemic, unfortunately the pandemic did come. So we're trying to keep in touch, and staying in touch with my family all across the country and even across the ocean is great. Texting has been great. And, you know, visiting family that's still nearby, socially distant, masks on, still making sure that we're staying safe. This Thanksgiving, my mom and I, it was just us, you know, we didn't want to bring anything, even though COVID is getting worse. But, you know, as time goes on, I am hoping to see my family in person.
And then Tristan, you have been navigating college and other responsibilities over this last 8 months. Can you tell me what that has been like and how you've maintained connections?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I started out at a community college before transferring to Vanderbilt, and COVID really hit during my last semester. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the most social person, and a lot of my classmates were older adults who had their own lives, so there wasn't a huge social aspect. So when it hit, and they're like, "Oh, classes are, you know, remote from now," and I was like, "All right, I don't care, like I'm good." And for a while, it was cool because I could just, you know, sleep in late, get up, and then, you know, attend online. But after a while, I realized that even though it wasn't big, we did have a, you know, a sense of community that we were really missing out on. Even it might not have been the same at some other four-year universities, but I started to miss my classmates, even if the only time I saw them was like for the 90 minutes we were in class. We would have conversations or whatever. So, you know, I figured some people are probably feeling the same way because I know I'm not social. So the more extroverted people, you know, it's probably hitting them more than it is me. So we started like doing group me, and it was all like related about, you know, whatever we had, but it kind of turned more social after a while. And, you know, just we didn't meet up when following them. We chose to follow them. So it was a lot of online through Zoom, through group me, I'm not going to say older friends, but, you know, there's a gap between the Instagram crowd and the Facebook crowd. So just different, different avenues through social media and through emails and things like that, we kind of reconnected. It wasn't necessarily hitting us the same way as it might have hit other populations who had more of a social emphasis in class. But after a while, we kind of did realize we appreciated each other, and we kind of worked to recreate that connection online.
So each of you has really kind of worked hard to kind of maintain connections, create it. I'm really curious about what's been missing for you in terms of connection. And on the flip side, as you kind of started to talk about, Tristan, how have you been able to build new connections and relationships? And KAYLA, I'll start with you. What's been missing?
So this is my senior year, and I've been looking forward to this ever since freshman year. Like, I'm a senior, I get prom, homecoming, my senior games. I'm a cheerleader, so I get my senior night, and I haven't been able to have any of that. So that's been really hard for me. And just adjusting to that reality of, okay, I'm not going to get that, but let's just see how can I make the best of my situation. Also, it's really hard to make connections with your teachers now because you only see them on calls, and it's usually just, okay, let's just get straight down to the business. This is your work. This is what you have to learn today. Homework. Okay, bye. And you really build those connections when you see your teachers in the hallways and you talk to them like, hey, or you stop by during your lunch period, like, I just want to talk to you and stuff like that. And we've been really missing that. So that has been the hardest part, and just connecting with my peers and stuff like that, how I don't see them all the time in the hallway because I don't have everybody's social media. I don't text everybody. But I still have friends at school who I might just not hang out with all the time, and I don't get to see them as much or talk to them really. So that's been really hard for me.
And have there been any surprising new connections that you've made?
There was this one teacher, actually. I love her for this. She makes sure that she talks to her students all the time. We get emails all the time like, hey, just checking up. How's your life? How's your family? Like, you're in this new program. Let's talk about that. Like, she makes sure we have that social connection and that we actually speak to each other and we build those bonds, especially because, like, we're remote. So they're taking it just as hard as us. It really hurts the teachers, too, to just not see their students because that's what they come to school for. That's their job. That's what they love to do. So yeah, I really appreciate my teacher for like actually building those bonds and just talking to me, you know.
And then Tia, tell us a bit about what's missing in connections right now.
So at home, I really got a sense of home in my school. My school is very big on community and respecting that, these teachers aren't just here to be teachers. They're here to be, family members to you and helping you reach out to your family members as well. So not being able to see my peers that I used to call my own family is like really something that really took away from me. I used to see school as like a second home, and I would call like the principal my dad because he used to be like so on me and just making sure that I'm okay, making sure I can help him fill in for something, or just even my advisor, she felt like a mom to me. So, something that's missing is just that physical connection as it is for anyone, but I just feel a lot more clingy towards my school because we really do a great job of representing what family means. In what ways I was able to build a better connection? I would say that I have been taking this time to really get in touch with newer classmen and seeing what they have to offer to the school. Usually if I was at school right now, I would be working with, new families and helping them get accustomed to our school, but now it's just a little bit different. So that's what I really like to do. It helps me feel a lot better. So, volunteering helps. And yeah.
Thank you. And then Tristan, tell me a bit about what's been missing for you in terms of connection. You gave us a sneak preview. Tell me what's been missing, and have you made any surprising new connections or relationships during this time?
It's funny, I'm a very work-oriented person, and I've realized that a lot of the relationships that I've built, a lot of the events in my schedule are all kind of planned or like made with the purpose of motivating me to do work. Because in addition to being work oriented, I'm also very anxious. So I worry about everything. I need to get this done on time. I need to get this done on time. But at the same time, somehow I'm also a huge procrastinator. And I'm like, I need to get this done on time, but I don't want to do it right now. So I'll do it later. And I'll make sure that I meet up with such and such because I know that I'm going to forget about it. But if I have a meeting with them, then we can work on it together. So I realized that a lot of what I did was depend on other people to keep me in line. And I was doing the work, but I'm very forgetful and very anxious. And I know that it's hard for me to keep track of it on my own. So that's how I built a lot of relationships is through work so that we can all kind of hold each other accountable. And that was really missing my last semester. I was lucky enough that I maintained good enough grades and all that. It wasn't like I just dropped off and I wasn't able to, pass any classes. I still got mostly A's, but I recognize the last few weeks of the semester was a struggle because that network that motivated me and held me accountable all of a sudden went missing because it was centered around in-person meetings and it was centered around meeting in the class. So I recognized that a big motivating factor was that other people were holding me accountable. And I knew that if I forgot about this homework, I was letting them down. So that helped me a little bit to stay motivated to keep track of things. When that went missing, I had to find other ways of holding myself accountable. And I had to find other ways of maintaining that connection because a lot of what we were doing was centered around work. And now we're all kind of doing that on our own in a sense because we're not meeting. So that was, it was kind of an adjustment to make in the last few weeks. We kind of figured it out. We got more work oriented around the different apps that we use in our lives and we made it work. But I just noticed that was a big change that my whole like social network surrounding school was kind of like cut out from under me. And that had further reaching effects than I realized. And then as far as new connections, that's been a whole new thing because I ended last semester at one school and I started here at a new one. It's been a shift in culture. I'm 21 and I'm around people that are 21 or maybe 18, 19 years old now, 20 years old. And I recognize just the differences that come with, socioeconomic status, life experience, because I'm looking at some of these people and it's like, I really want to call y'all kids, but you're not. I've just been through a whole lot that you haven't recognized, that you haven't had to go through yet. So it feels like we're in different points of our lives, even though we're only a year or two apart. And that's not anything against them. It's just me. I kind of feel disconnected from these people because our lives have been so different. So as I've recognized that, I'm kind of feeling alienated, kind of feeling disconnected because we can't talk about a lot of different things. I've made an effort to try to find things that I can connect about just because a big part of my social circle is related around work. And if I feel disconnected from these people, if I feel like I can't build that social circle, then my work is going to suffer because of that. So we've really centered around school. And it's funny, I joined a group project and I was surprised to make this connection, but I'm in this project with two 18-year-old girls from New York. And I expected us to not have anything to talk about, but now we're like super close and we're like best friends. And I just find myself a lot of times watching them, this is their first semester of college, losing their minds over any little thing. And I'm just like, chill, y'all, like it'll be all right. Like the few years makes a difference. And I find myself feeling disconnected initially, but I've kind of started to feel this role almost as a mentor towards the people that are a little bit younger, a little bit less experienced than me, just because this is a really hard time to make that initial step. I'm making an initial step myself, but I've been in college before. This is their first time coming out of high school, entering university. And I didn't realize how big that adjustment would be and how I would be able to help kind of ease some of those anxieties just because I've dealt with this before.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of use that as kind of context. I'm really curious because we've all had some time to think about kind of the before, what we're experiencing now. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how you might, if given the chance to recreate the school experience, how you would recreate it to more fully meet your needs, to more fully build upon your skills and interests, and to be fairer. What would that look like for you? What would that look like for your families? And what would that look like for your friends? And again, I'm going to give KAYLA and TEIA opportunity to talk first because they are currently having a high school experience. So KAYLA, what would kind of a redesign of the high school experience look like?
I love this question so much. So at my school, we're predominantly Hispanic and African American. That's our school population. So it's crazy when I think about, we don't have any classes to actually teach us about ourselves. We don't have any Chicano studies or any African American studies. So what I would do, I would make a requirement that every high school student has to take a ethnic class or ethnic literature class or something, so we can be educated not only on ourselves but other ethnicities too. Because when we educate ourselves, the bounds are like so wide. Like we can do anything honestly at that point, because education to me is power and is everything. It blurs the social divide between races. So like those white students, they have an understanding of minorities and people of color, so they can have an understanding of like what we're going through. Not say, oh, I feel you, but like they say, okay, I see what your struggle is, and I see like your culture and your history, and I can be able to appreciate it. And it blurs the divide. Like we're able to end the school to prison pipelining with that, because we now are empowered. We can see people that look like us doing amazing things. Like with this election, we have a Madam Vice President, a Black Vice President. I felt so amazing to tell my little cousin, 5 years old, we have somebody in office that looks like us. She looks like us. And she just felt so like, I can do it too. Like, yes. Seeing that gives everybody so much power. And it's just, that's what I always wanted, like just African American studies, Jewish studies, just stuff like that. Like, so we can all be knowledgeable on each other. So we just can be more united, you know? So that's what I will always like want to fix in the education system.
And then Tia, tell me a little bit about what you've been thinking about and how you might redesign the experience. You talked about having a sense of home in your high school. And tell me what you've been thinking about over the last 8 months and how you'd redesign for connection.
So great question. You know, I want to talk a little bit more about the virtual standpoint. So I think while other schools like immediately started virtual learning, mine took a little bit of a step back, and we kind of started like towards late April. So how school was back then, it would just be our core classes. We just have, for example, English would just be Mondays, and it would just be for 1 hour, so we can maximize that learning time while also going out to office hours and having study groups of peers, so we can really get that education feel. So versus now where I have 3 of my core classes a day plus an elective, it's just really draining. And I feel like I never really have time for myself or time to take care of my mom or see my other types of family. So I wish that I could really maximize learning time each day rather than just, my brain has switched to biochemistry versus my brain has switched to Spanish and then back to English. So it's just very hard, especially when I don't get any breaks between the day, to just center myself and breathe and take a chance to eat and just take care of myself. So yeah, I think that's really it. My needs, I think that I also have a lot of anxiety when it comes to that. Even before we were in physical school, I would also try to like take my lunch break to just meditate and make sure I eat and just try to study a little bit, versus now where I'm actually stuck home and I can't really like have an outlet because I can't drive, or I don't really like walking around my neighborhood. So just self-care is all that really needs, because we're humans too, you know, as much as teachers are tired, students are also tired. So there has to be some type of middle ground where we can maximize social health while also educational health, while also still getting that good need on both ends.
Thank you. And we, as in all great conversations, we are running up on time. I wanted to just give Tristan just kind of a last quick word and maybe give us a bit of advice about how adults might be thinking about going forward and kind of co-creating and supporting young people and creating places of connection. Tristan?
Thank you. I think it's very important to educate ourselves and others on the realities and the holistic lives of students. and of youth advocates and educators. As something that I've recognized even at Vanderbilt, for example, like something that KAYLA said about the social divide, that blinds you to issues that other groups have to deal with, and you would never know because you've never had to. And I think that comes in various ways. Like I'm in class with people who have never struggled in their lives, and at the same time, I'm looking at them and seeing their realities and recognizing like you don't understand me at all, and that's nothing against you. But then when I'm being held to a standard by people that don't understand me, that creates issues. Like I'm dealing with friends and families who are dealing with homelessness right now because of the pandemic. I'm sorry that I'm not necessarily worried about this like you are. And that doesn't mean that your words are not real, but our realities are very different. And if you don't understand that, you can't understand me. And if you don't understand me, you can't treat me how I need to be treated. And that's not just me. You know, I haven't suffered as much as others in this pandemic, and I'm coming from a place of privilege in some ways that others don't have. And I think that even with that, I'm still struggling. And people who aren't struggling like I am have very real issues. And we're not ever going to be able to hold somebody to, the light and say, this is exactly how everybody like you is. We need to know each and every individual person and understand their struggles and understand what they're dealing with if we want to treat anybody effectively, because treating everybody the same leads to nobody getting what they really need. And I think recognizing that, it's really easy to get caught up in like what the youth of today are dealing with. That's very true, but I'm a youth of today and my problems are not the same as everybody else or my roommates or whatever. And I think that's very important. We can't know everything about every individual's life, but the more we can spur communication, we can spur connectedness, the more we can understand each other and the more effective we can be in understanding and treating and supporting each other.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to thank our wonderful panel. I'm going to invite them to stay on screen, and I'm going to invite the reactors and Hal to come on screen. I'm going to take myself off. Thank you again. And we will have Hal and our two reactors to be in continued dialogue with the young people.
Thank you very much, Alicia. And again, just a very, very powerful and thoughtful panel. I'm going to ask SHELITA Richmond and KAYLA Jackson to join us here. As you introduce yourselves, please also give your initial reactions to what you've heard as a part of the panel and the kinds of things and questions perhaps it raises for you. So we'll begin with KAYLA, please.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good morning to some. I'm KAYLA Jackson with AASA, the School Superintendents Association, and I always love following young people. Always a tough group to follow because you could have talked on until 2 o'clock. And so my initial reactions are, you guys are spot on. I have kids who are a little older than you guys. Tristan, I have a daughter who is a college senior who's at home. I am living that with her right now. And so I hear what you're saying. And this is tough. You talk about what you've missed. My heart bleeds for you. My KAYLA twin, I told her I was the first KAYLA, but understanding those milestone events that are markers of your transition from a high school senior into the more adult college and post-secondary world that you were perhaps missing or not being able to experience in the traditional way. And how that's like, you worked all these years, you put 13 years of effort in, and then you don't get that payoff. You don't get the pictures, you don't get the memories. And so that breaks my heart. Listening to TEIA talk about the need for self-care in between and paralleling that. And I saw something in the comments, someone said, we don't have that time in between for self-care. When we are in the office, we can maybe run to the ladies' room or go to the copier or go to the coffee room and take a break between events. Whereas now, literally today at 10, 11, 12 and 1 o'clock, and there are no breaks. And so I will be here in my lovely dining room / office all day. And, I have a cup of water. And so the idea that we don't get that break and understanding and hearing it from you, because we think they're in school, it's fine. They don't need to take that break when in fact self-care, and it's great to recognize that at a young age so you can carry those good habits forward and hopefully not only change how we do education, but also how we do work. So keep that going as we, move along. And Tristan, good for you. Good for you. But to recognize the differences and also understanding how life experience changes that experience that you're having as a student now, seeing how, it's almost the best of both worlds, having experienced that community college piece and seeing the older students, but also being able to come back and that you recognize and can mentor younger students is wonderful. And when you mentioned group project, I sort of cringed because, as I said, I'm living with that with my daughter, and she has had such a tough time with group projects. And I'm thinking, why wasn't Tristan in her group so I didn't have to have 2 weeks of, I can't believe this guy isn't doing his part. But just understanding how all that plays on how you're experiencing your education now. And that's just going to school. It doesn't even account for the family and other social connections that have had to change and the trauma that we're all experiencing as a result of this pandemic. So thank you all for sharing. So I'm sorry, I talk a lot. Shelita.
That's fine. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Shelita. I'm a program director for youth development and workforce for the Urban League of Detroit and Southeastern Michigan. So first of all, I'd like to say you all are phenomenal young people. This chat has been blowing up with kudos to you. I'm inspired to sit here and to hear your stories. I work with young people, so I can understand, KAYLA, I have a senior and she's feeling the same thing. She's like, what do I do? The concern that you have for your education. I'm inspired to know that you all have specific things that you would change about your current school situation. And hearing that allows us to take this information to advocate that you have those breaks or that you have a diversity class so that you can learn about the people that you go to school with. Because once you go into the workforce, you're going to encounter a lot of different individuals. I'm inspired just to know that you've come out of your comfort zone. You were an introvert and now you've expanded your social circle. And I know that you all teaching your family members how to utilize Zoom, how to take advantage of social media to stay connected. That is fantastic. So I'm just inspired. You all are doing a phenomenal job. Keep up the work.
So thank you, Shelita and KAYLA. When you're hearing young people talk about this and the work that you do on a day-to-day basis, what do you think is missing for them, right? So we ask the young people to express what they might feel is missing, but what is missing from your perspective, from the lives of young people that you provided in the past and maybe still are? But secondarily, what's missing from your work and perspective, from where you sit? What's missing for you as you think about our current circumstance?
Well, I think based on the current circumstances, having young people express their concerns. So we don't do enough of listening truly. As an adult, we create programs or we create activities and we think that's what you all want. But instead of sitting back and listening to you all and you helping to direct us, every organization that serves the youth should have a youth advisory council because that would be a youth-led voice that can help make sure that we are meeting your needs. I think mental health and social health and wellness is essential to have for young people and prepare because a lot of young people now are dealing with a lot of anxiety. I hear that in the young people that I work with. They're experiencing depression. School is not just about education, it's social. You're learning a lot of different things by going to school every day. And now that's been stripped away from you. So I just hope that the individuals on the call, if you work with young people, take the opportunity to sit and just listen.
Do you mind if I interject really quickly?
Sure.
I definitely agree with what you're saying, SHELITA. I think in addition to listening, which I think is a great first step, I think there should be some measure of accountability for following through with what the conversations are. Because I've seen in my own life, in my own personal experience, it's very easy to fall into complacency, thinking you're doing such a good job of hearing the youth. And you can hear the youth all day, but if you don't act on what you hear, then the youth might not want to talk or might not feel like it's doing anything. If I pour my heart out every day and they say I did such a good job and how much they respect me, and then in the next 6 months nothing has changed, what was the point? And that's not to say that you're not acting on that, but I think it's very easy to get caught up in the first step and not follow through with the second.
Thank you.
Very important. Thank you. KAYLA?
Sure. So what's missing for youth? The natural expression of being a young person is missing for young people right now. You guys are not able to do what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be out and about socializing. You're supposed to not only have the sort of academic pieces of learning, but there are those social experiences and other experiences that you're missing. Working, internships, extracurricular activities, hugs. Yeah, hugs, crushes on that girl, that boy, those deep conversations that we really don't have time for, or we think we don't as adults. You're missing all of those opportunities to do those kinds of things and to make some good memories that'll last you until you are an ancient creature such as myself. at 56, and I can look back on high school and say, yeah, we did this or we did that. And so I think that's certainly a huge piece of what you're missing. I think, there's a challenge and an opportunity. I think these are amazing times that we are living in, and the opportunity to participate safely in some of the movements is really, I didn't think we would be here again. I had hoped. I was born in 1964 when all the civil rights legislation was passed, and I thought maybe we had gotten it right. Yeah, well, but you guys still have that opportunity to get it right. And so I think that is an amazing piece that lies ahead. And so to actually be able to make incredible change in the 21st century, it is all for you. It is there for you to do. And so I am literally passing the baton with my bad knee on to you guys to go out there and do the work. And what is missing for us is also that interaction. I don't work with students directly in the same way that SHELITA does. And so we don't have that opportunity to go out and do our school visits, which was a huge component of my work. I did a lot of focus groups and talking with young people, and that's really where I learned the most. And Tristan tried not to pay it lip service, but a focus group is exactly what it is. We're one and done, but taking what we learned from young people and really using that to inform the work that we do and to inform our programming. We work with school superintendents, so it's a different kind of informing, and these guys are a little more like turtles. They move very slowly and very deliberately, but we're in their ears. And so we can make those mid-course corrections because they do move so slowly. And so it's good to hear. It's important for us to hear from young people to really know if the work that we're doing or the grants that we're writing or the money that we're seeking is actually what we should be doing for you guys. So that is a key piece. And okay, we are over time.
Yeah.
So can I sneak in out just real quick an update? So Oakland and Sacramento are doing really well. Just a brief update on them. They are working in community partnerships to get students what they need to continue doing the work. They have surfaced, Sacramento especially, has surfaced a number of the missing students who were disconnected from school and reconnected them. What has been shown though is those who did not have still don't have. Inequities exist, and so we are not surprised by who does not have what they need. So, sorry to interrupt you.
No, thank you very much. That's what I was going to ask for, an update. So I see in the chat that we also will have the opportunity to hear about some of that in the breakouts.
Yeah, go to Brian's breakout. He will give you much more information about all of that.
And so we want to give a hearty thank you and a shout out to all of our panelists and our reactors. Thank you very much. And thank you to Hal as well. Again, in the chat, we have the link to the breakout rooms. So we're going to continue these conversations in those breakout rooms, and you have an opportunity to decide where you want to go to continue the conversation. Feel free to log off and go to that link as I'm just closing us out. Again, you will see the breakouts, learning from school administrators, again with KAYLA, who is a wonderful reactor, and Brian, listening to student and youth organizers with Emmanuel and Tristan, who was one of our panelists, leveraging national youth organizations with Meg and Mary, leading with belonging with Priscilla and myself, leveling with families, Adenike and Nancy, lifting up student experiences with Jean, and linking equity and organizational practices with author Kate and Michelle. Again, feel free to go to that link in the chat and select one of those breakout groups to join. Thank you again for joining this main stage. This is the meeting 3 of 5 part series. We'll have another main stage and a set of breakout discussions the same time next week. Next week's topic will be increasing coordination horsepower at every level. Thank you again. We will end this session momentarily.